You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and joining me as he does every Monday, Lindsay Crosby, the Auburn banker himself. A little Money Monday action. How are you, bud?
I am okay. I have to tell you that that was not very cash money of the Auburn bankers of the Auburn Tigers on Saturday.
Yeah, it was a disaster. I mean, that was a really ugly football game. Yeah. And even if they had won it, it'd be like, cool, I'm glad we won. But oh my gosh, that was a rough game for our eyeballs. Looking at the stats here as we record this early Sunday morning, and with the exception of Bo Nix's pass attempts, the stats just look like it's halftime because there's not a whole lot of yards to be had there. But I guess we'll start with the offense. Total disaster other than like one drive late in the first quarter. You score 3 points, and then you don't score 3 points again. And it's not for the lack of defense giving you great field position. I mean, they started several drives around the 50-yard line, and normally up to this season, you'd be like, okay, Auburn's at least going to get 3 out of this. There was one drive where they probably should have gotten 3, and Anders missed a field goal he's perfectly capable of making. But a lot of people putting it all on Bo Nix. I don't think that is fair. I don't think it's accurate. Was Bo Nix good Saturday? No, he was not. But neither was the offensive line, and neither were the wide receivers. I actually thought the running backs played fine. So the whole like let's blame everything on one person. Let's don't do that. We're not doing that here. By the time this goes up, I will have the takeaways article written and put up on auburnwire.com. And my second point for in that, Lindsay, is that Auburn has to hit the transfer portal hard for offensive linemen this summer, because it's clear to me, and tell me if you think this logic is flawed, but if Auburn had their future plans at offensive line already, we would have seen them at some point this season. Don't you think? I mean, there would be enough warrant to put them in the football game, and they're not really putting other guys in. It's all upperclassmen. And I think that's an issue. I think that's something you have to fix this summer. A lot of people surprised, myself included, that they didn't go after more offensive linemen this past offseason, but maybe he just wanted to see what he had. I don't know. But that was a huge issue. And whenever Auburn plays a good defensive front, you see this happen. The other time was against Georgia. Now, fortunately, they're not playing another defensive front that good this season. Maybe Mississippi State, maybe Alabama, but those are at home, and we see this team respond differently. I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue moving forward, but that's something you got to fix before next season starts.
Yeah, if you had better offensive linemen, they would have played. The only argument that I would accept as far as the future of the offensive line would be if you think Garner Langlow has the talent, but just hasn't had the physical maturity of a year in a college weight room to contribute, why he wouldn't play this season, but would be a key part next year. Other than that, yeah, if you had a better option at line, you would have played that better option. So think about how good this line is now, or not good now, and then think about what's going to happen when a bunch of these guys graduate and leave. And we'll probably see one or two of them use their super senior eligibility, because maybe they either they think they're a fringe NFL prospect, which if they do, tough lesson to learn there, but maybe they just really enjoy playing college football and want to get one more shot, want to go get a free master's degree, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, sure.
So it's hard to think about the future of the offensive line and be comfortable with it. We're definitely going to have to go, again, like you said, portal hard, go find some guys. But
Did
the
you
offense,
use portal as a verb?
We're going to have to go to the portal and get guys.
No, you just use. No, I like it. We can portal this up. That's fine. Yeah. We got to portal the offensive line.
Let's portal this. Listen, if the grammar police try to find me for that, I'm good for it. I don't care. I'm fine.
That's money well spent. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely go in there. Got to find some more offensive linemen. And you could see that was the issue yesterday. Yes, Bo didn't play well. Yes, the receivers didn't get separation. But it all came back to the offensive line. You mentioned the running backs played fine. but the running game wasn't fine because of the struggles of the offensive line. Friend of the pod, Justin Ferguson, in his observations article that came out late last night or this morning, it's all blur. Shout out Frisky Whiskey for that. Said that like 44% of our runs went for less than 2 yards. 44% of our runs went for 4 yards or more. Didn't have a single explosive run at all. So 15 yards.
Which essentially that is a wasted play.
Yes.
When you combine all of those with the drops, I mean, just a lot of snaps where it's like that did nothing. That there was no production there whatsoever.
We gave away a down, and for it, we got nothing. And you always see that, that calculus. That's why defenses that's why the draw play works so well in 3rd and long, because they give up the yards for a down and it's 4th down. And we had too many opportunities where we got behind the change and we got off pace because we did a run play for 1 yard, or we threw we went for a pass attempt and receiver didn't get separation and it was incomplete. And now it's 2nd and 10. All you did is trade a down for nothing. So we're going to see this problem going forward when you play a good team with a good line. And I don't really know how you fix it. I don't really know what we do in this case.
Right. But is this line good enough to win the rest of the football games? And it might be. I think the offensive line for Auburn is better than the offensive line at LSU, and LSU almost beat Alabama Saturday night.
Yeah, I have a theory about this. And according to you, we no longer say Alabama's vulnerable, and I'm not going to say that. But I've noticed a difference when you play, because it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jims and Joes, which you always hear. So there's good talent, there's good coaching, which includes play calling.
Sure.
And then there is a good team. So like Alabama right now doesn't look like they're a good team. They have good talent and they have good coaching, but it's 11 guys trying to win matchups. And the talent's good enough where they're winning 10 of those matchups.
Yeah.
Maybe even all 11. And when you see a team with good coaching and good talent who is a good team, like when Texas A&M beat Alabama, they can overcome that. I think we're a good team. I think we have good coaching. Our talent isn't as good as some of these teams, but it's in the same stratosphere. Offensive line is probably the biggest gap between some of these other teams. But when you have a good coaching, including play calling, and you have a good team, you can make up the difference on another team that doesn't have all 3 of those. Right now, Alabama doesn't have all 3 of those. Mississippi State doesn't have all 3 of those. South Carolina definitely doesn't have all 3 of those. So the games are winnable. But like you see the Georgia game, you see the A&M game, a team has good talent, good coaching, and they're a good team, and we got blown out of the water. So those are behind us.
No, I get that. I get that for sure, and I agree. I'm having a hard time trying to figure out like what level of freak out Auburn fans need to have, because the vast majority of Auburn fans, at least the ones on the internet, are very upset, and that's fine. You can be upset. It was not a good game. You scored 3 points. But is that who we are? Like, I don't think it is. Like, I don't think this offense is an offense that's going to score 3 points a game, especially over the last few weeks. They may score 3 points a game against teams where they are not as good in the trenches, but there's only one of those left on this schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, is this an 8-4 team? Probably. It's probably an 8-4 team, but maybe you can steal something at the Iron Bowl at the end of the year, and that'd be incredible. But then if you go 9-3 with a win in the Iron Bowl, all of a sudden it's like, you know what? That was a pretty good season. Good season. I just, people coming after Bobo, and I was all for going after Bobo after Penn State, but ever since then, he really redeemed himself. And just looking at the game Saturday, it didn't really feel like game plan was the issue. No. It felt like, it felt like a lot of it was execution, that a lot of it was just like, A&M wants to win this game way more than Auburn does. Now, how much of that is coaching that trickles down into, making sure players are motivated and make sure they execute? A lot of it. So I 100% get that. But Mike Bobo's not going anywhere. Like, let's just go ahead and get, like, if you're listening to this and you hate Mike Bobo, which a lot of you do, mentally get ready for him to still be at Auburn next year. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah, this was the perfect storm of a team that had better talent than us, that had really good coaching, and had that cohesiveness. You're done with those. All those are gone. It was Georgia, it was A&M, And then I'd argue Penn State, if Penn State was a neutral site game or was even just played now, that game would look different. And so you've gotten past those games. So everything else from here on out has to be winnable. But understanding Alabama does have better talent than you. They have probably 10 of their 11 players are better than 10 of your 11 players, with the exception of maybe Tank Bigsby on offense. I mean, other than that, every guy is better than yours. So that's going to happen. But I mean, all credit to Texas A&M. They obviously they used the bye. They used that extra week, like we talked about. They used that extra week to look and see what Auburn was going to do, figure out a game plan to just let them not get comfortable. And John Samuel Schenker had quotes after the game. He said, like, they just kept mixing up their looks, and we could never really get an idea of what they were doing in certain situations. Like, we didn't know what to expect because they kept doing different things. And that's something you don't put into your game plan over 3 days. You do that over a week and a half of film study and practice and review. So shout out to them. That bye week ended up being important.
Use their bye week. Absolutely. And we saw Auburn benefit from that bye week against Ole Miss last week. This is part of it. It's how the schedule falls. But
yeah.
All right. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks is the leader in college sports daily fantasy. It's a ton of fun. They've got all kinds of different, props and all kinds of different. You can play fantasy if you want to do the fantasy stuff. You can just do raw output as far as yards and touches and touchdowns and all that if you want. But yeah, check it out. And with college basketball here and upon us, be sure to check out Prize Picks. You'll have something going on every single night. Go to prizepicks.com, use promo code Locked On. You'll get a deposit match up to $100. You got to love that. Don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com, use promo code Locked On, or go to the App Store and download the app today. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. And if folks wonder, why aren't we talking about Auburn basketball? Mondays at 6 o'clock Central Time, we will put up our weekly Auburn basketball show. We'll have Coach Pruitt and Zac Blackerby on every single week, as well as just kind of talk about what happened over the weekend. So that'll be at 6 o'clock on the YouTube channel, as well as in your podcast feed. So
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Central Time. There you go. Lots to talk about from what happened Friday night, too. And also, Zac Blackerby was the best player on the floor. Am I biased a little bit? Sure, absolutely, but he was fantastic. All right, let's talk about the defense. The defense played a really good game, and I think we saw some unfamiliar names or not as familiar names really step up to the plate. Ladarius Tennyson stepped up. I thought he was really, really impressive. He was second on the team in tackles, 8 total tackles. He only had 1 tackle for a loss. It feels like he had more than that. Donovan Kaufman, I feel like we saw a lot more of him. He was around the football a lot more than normal. I think some of that was him giving up catches, but still.
Forced a huge fumble.
Yep, he did. Absolutely. And then, Zacoby normally has double-digit tackles. He only had 4, but I think a lot of that was game plan. A lot of that was the defensive backs around the football a lot because they were playing them closer to the line of scrimmage, which is what we predicted. Playing guys close to the line of scrimmage to make Calzone beat you with his arm. And at times he did. He didn't really. There's a few people coming at us afterwards, and it's like, no, he's not good. Like, he scored 13 points. The A&M offense scored 13 points, but it was a lot more than what Auburn was able to score on Saturday.
He was 15 to 29 for 192. So Calzone didn't beat you. No. He also learned that maybe don't take on a defensive player, shoulder and head first. That was kind of funny, but no, it was Auburn's defense played fantastic. I mean, they played well. And the thing that I struggle with is I threw out last night in our Discord, Auburn lost in all 3 phases. And people immediately got on me and they're like, hey, no, the defense won. I'm like, no, the defense passed. The defense did really well. If you're doing a 1 to 10 score, because you don't score on a 1 to 5 scale, that's just dumb. If you do a 1 to 10 scale, the defense was a good, solid 7 or 8. But Texas A&M's defense was a 9. So
I'm passed. A 10. I mean, they allowed 3 points.
That's a good point. Okay. So yeah,
3 points.
Your defense passed, but their defense did well. It's like when you're in college and you take that exam, that really tough exam, and you thought you did really well. You got like an 82, and you're like, this curve, I'm going to kill it. And then somebody in the class got like a 97 and just ruined the curve for everybody. Right. That's what happened. Most games, this defense is more than enough to win the game. This one, it was not. And really, we just didn't see any sort of pressure on Calzada. We didn't really see him. We didn't record a sack. We had very few tackles for loss. I want to say we had 4 total tackles for loss. And it just felt like Calzada had time to sit back there, and like let it bake in the oven before he threw it out with some sauce on it. I mean, he had plenty of time.
Flavors kind of meld together in the coal fire oven at Baumhauer's. Yep. No, the defense was fine, especially like you said, no pass rush whatsoever. And I talked about that last week. Like, I don't think Auburn's going to get home on them, and they didn't. But
they did.
That's okay. I think moving forward, they should be able to, with the exception of Alabama. We'll see. And they'll have a lot of opportunities to get after the quarterback against Mississippi State. The interesting thing I'm now looking at is, do you change what you do as far as generating pass rush? Do you blitz a little bit more if you're Derek Mason? Do you kind of keep guys back against Mississippi State? That's going to be interesting to see how they game plan against this, unique offense in the conference.
So as somebody with a little bit of experience with the air raid, I don't think you're going to blitz on the air raid, because so much of what your receivers do is predicated on finding the open spots in the zone and sitting down and getting the ball. There's so many option routes in a true air raid offense. And given that this is now his second year there, you feel like they've had time to institute a lot of that. So to me, you try to get your best pass rushing group out there. You try to send 4 and have 7 in coverage, or 6 in coverage with a spy on Will Rogers. And you try to, you don't give them extra opportunities to get the ball out where there's not somebody covering the back. At the same time, if you've gone this long and you haven't changed up what you're doing on defense, are you going to change it now? You're 2/3 of the way through the season. If you haven't started blitzing a lot more, why would you start now? I feel like this is who Derek Mason is. This is what the defense he wants to run. And he's either going to get better talent for it, or he's going to run it at 80% strength the entire time. So,
but also, we have to ask the question, Lindsay, like, does the defense need some massive overhaul? Because over the last few weeks, the defense has been great, including Saturday. I mean, the defense did what it should have done. Auburn should have been able to score 14 points. They should have been able to. And I mean, the fact of the matter is the offense allowed more points than they were able to score, because Bo Nix just dropped the football. I mean, what in the world was that? The play before, they set up this awesome, reverse flea flicker type thing, and he dropped that. And props to him to, getting the ball back and throwing it away. That was fine. That's definitely what you do in that situation.
It came back to him a little high. You kind of want that to be chest high, not head high, but it hit his hands. And that's kind of the rule we always it hits your hands. You got to catch it.
I mean, he hits when he throws it to his receivers, normally they have to adjust, return the favor a little bit. And then, the next play, he just flat out dropped it. It's like, what is going on? What was that?
To me, it really felt like Bo was starting to feel the pressure of, we're not getting anything going against this offense, against this defense. Right. So I have an opportunity, and he kind of went into hero ball mode a bit, and our offensive line couldn't keep up and couldn't give him the time for the hero ball thing to work out. Like he got to the point where he started to try a little too hard. That's why you saw the fumble. We saw multiple times he's trying to spin away from defenders, and he keeps losing ground. And I think he got sacked once. It was like a 20-yard sack because he kept reversing field trying to get away. And so at a certain point, I'm not necessarily blaming him fully for some of those struggles, because he was forced into that position by the poor performance of the offense around him.
Sure.
But he definitely didn't have his best game. He definitely, even earlier in the game when it was still close, a lot of the balls that were coming out were not as accurate as we've seen from recent Bo Nix. It looked like the old Bo Nix and not the new Bo Nix. So frustrating.
What did you think about him kind of getting after some of his receivers for lining up wrong and, all of that? I liked it. I like seeing it. You then have to back it up. You don't need to just drop the football afterwards, but I think you lose some credibility there. But I love the whole, let's demand excellence here. Let's get after this.
Yeah.
I love that.
If we're going to fire a wide receivers coach because the guys weren't getting lined up correctly, then I think there's been recognition and there's been conversation around the program that this is an issue we need to fix. And so Bo Nix getting angry at a wide receiver, it's like, hey, we've talked about this. This game is already hard enough without you doing this wrong. So I'm fine with it, provided that it doesn't become a recurring thing.
Right.
You know, you don't like, I don't want Bo to be known as the guy who yells at his teammates all the time.
Sure.
But I understand in this situation, the frustration's mounting for everyone. And that's kind of like a reminder, hey, you have to lock in. We have to get this. Like, we can't afford to take a procedure penalty here when we're already struggling to do anything. I'm fine with it.
I get it. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. They're rotating in a bunch of new flavors on their website, built.com. Most of them limited amount of time, so be sure to jump on that if it's a flavor that excites you. But if you haven't had a Built Bar by now and you've been listening to the show for a while, go ahead and try it. They are delicious. They taste like a candy bar, but you look at the label and it's good for you. All very high in protein, very low in calories. I love that you can have one for a snack or for breakfast or something, and it actually keeps you full. Most of the time when you eat some of those things, you're like hungry an hour and a half later. So be sure to check it out. Built.com. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Lindsay, we got a few minutes left. They went with Shaun Shivers a lot more in this game than they have the previous few games. I think he led Auburn. I'm double checking this. Yeah, he led Auburn in receptions. He went 6 for 40. And then he also had 3 carries. So, 9 touches for Shaun Shivers. That's more than what we've seen in the past few weeks. What do you think was up with that?
So part of it, there's probably a couple aspects there. I think one is they seem pretty comfortable in Shaun Shivers as a pass blocking back. And so I think having him in the situation where he can block or he can run, go out, catch a pass, probably a little bit also of Jarquez Hunter has never played a college season before. And you have to think at this point in time in the season, the touches and the extra physicality of an SEC schedule versus a high school schedule are starting to add up on him. And whenever you're playing a team that's better than you, I think there's kind of like an inherent bias of you want to go with the veteran who's dealt with it before, who's experienced it, versus throwing in a rookie, a young guy, to try it for the first time. And so Jarquez Hunter finished with 4 total touches. He had 4 carries, 18 yards. And it kind of felt to me like one of those, all right, we have to be careful here because we can't afford a mistake. So let's go with the veteran who's done this before, who's seen this, who's not going to be intimidated by the physicality of the linebacker or intimidated by the speed of the defensive back or the size of the defensive lineman. Let's go with him over the rookie who we've already given a lot of touches to for an 18-year-old in the SEC West. So I don't think it's anything more than that. I think it's just it's a matchup thing. It's a time of season thing. If this game's played week 2, maybe you do see more Jarquez Hunter. I don't know.
Okay. I get that. The way they use Shivers is interesting, though, because sometimes he's a power back. Sometimes he's the gadget speed guy. Sometimes he's just the third down back that does a little bit of everything, including pass blocking or, the swing passes. And I think that's great. We saw a lot of that against LSU when Auburn played LSU earlier in the year, and it was great. It was kind of the coming out party for Shivers in that role. And then against Georgia, you didn't really see it. And then, you kind of saw him phase out and go more with Bigsby and Hunter moving forward. But there was a play where like Shivers was the fullback. It was like the lead blocker. And like, that didn't work. That didn't work at all. And so I wonder why they wanted him to go with that role in this game.
I think a little bit may have been they knew that Texas A&M like physically could match up with Auburn. And so you got to have a guy, Shaun Shivers is a guy, and you touched on it. He can do some of everything. He can catch passes. He can run the ball up the middle. He can run the ball out wide. And so when you have him on the field, it's just one extra thing for a defensive player to think about. Yep. And so the thought process is maybe somebody takes a step the wrong direction because they're expecting Shaun Shivers on a dive. They're expecting him to flare out towards the flat like he could catch a pass on a run-pass option or something. So may have been a little bit of trying to get them off balance or off alignment. And obviously didn't work, but
Sure.
That's always a possibility as well, is you don't want to telegraph what you're doing. And so let's take the guy who can do some of everything. Let's have him be on the field more often so that we can create that little bit of uncertainty. And it wasn't enough uncertainty for Texas A&M. They handled that offense pretty well.
No, they were all over it. They were all over it for sure. The wide receivers, our guy Kobe Hudson had a really tough game yesterday. He was targeted 5 times. He only caught it once. Like, that's not a great thing. Demetrius Robertson was targeted 4 times. He only had 1 catch. Shedrick Jackson was thrown at 8 times. He only caught it twice. I mean, just a lot of wasted downs. Mm-hmm. And you can't have that when you're only scoring 3 points. 3 points, Lindsay. And that's terrible.
Yeah, the longest play from scrimmage was a 15-yard pass to tight end Luke Deal up the seam, which was a beautiful ball thrown right at the back of his helmet. He made a great adjustment to get it. But when your longest pass is a 15-yard pass to a tight end, your longest play, 15-yard pass to a tight end, you're in for a rough day, and we definitely were. It's one of those, the receivers, I'm excited for the prospect of being able to tell recruits that, like, you can come in and compete for immediate playing time, because we have a lot of guys, and all of our guys, compared to some of the upper echelon guys in the SEC, they all feel like they're a step slower, they're a little bit smaller, and they're just not getting the separation that you see when you watch an Alabama play, when you watch an A&M play, when you watch Penn State play. They're not getting that separation. They can get schemed open against a defense that's not fundamentally sound. But when you play a defense that's good in all 3 phases, both personnel and coaching and cohesiveness, it's just not happening. And so the prospect of immediate playing time has to feel good to some of these recruits, because we need an impact receiver.
I wonder how many of these guys are leaving after this season. I wonder if they're like, I'm done here. This isn't working out. And they try to go somewhere else. I'm interested to seeing that really across the board, but especially at like the wide receiver spot. Because you got a feeling Harson's going to go after a bunch of dudes, and Auburn's got some rising, true freshmen coming in this class that may be able to make an impact, because they're going to be Harson's guys and not, guys that you throw to 8 times and you catch it once. Like, that's like Shedrick Jackson. I don't know what his deal is, and I like Shedrick Jackson a bunch, but that dude falls down every play. Like, why is he's never, when you see him post snap, he is never standing up, and I don't understand it. Is it his cleats?
Get some better cleats. Listen, Dana, get him some better cleats.
How does that happen? I don't get it. He falls down every time, Lindsay.
I think it kind of feels like he's trying to play a role that he's not suited out for. He's a little bit of a slower possession guy. It doesn't feel like he's that quick break, in and out of the break quickly to make a move on a defensive back and get open. And he's trying to do that, and he's physically not suited for that. We saw a lot last offseason, was the offseason, the defensive transfer. I really think this offseason is going to be the offseason of the offensive transfer. Harsin had a year to evaluate who's on this roster, to see how well they play, how well they can fit in the roles that he has for them. And I think you're going to see a lot of incoming transfers, probably more so on offense than defense this year. Derek Mason has his defense set up. He's keeping most of those pieces. Now we're going to see.
Let's see. He's losing Zacoby. He's losing enough. He's losing Smoke. He will lose
Wooten.
Yeah, he'll lose Wooten. He'll lose Wooden. He'll lose Fair. He'll lose McCreary.
He's brought in enough depth where he can make it work.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to get some guys, but
he's brought in enough depth. But offensively, I think there's plenty of places where Harsin can bring in guys.
You're right. And on the defense, like, you can, with the exception of corner, and it may be Jalen Simpson. He looked really good on Saturday. And like Ro Torrance. So, like, on defense, there's guys at all those positions where you're like, okay, this guy's probably going to step up next. Like, Lee Hunter is going to have a bigger role in the defensive front next year. And I think you still keep Marcus Harris. So, like, those guys are going to be fine. And then maybe a Brooks can come along in his development as, a redshirt freshman or something like that.
Joko Willis. I mean, there's bodies there. Whereas offense, there's not a lot of bodies there.
You're right.
That you haven't already tried.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So, you probably will see more in the transfer portal. So that's exciting. Because, man, this offense needs a makeover for sure. Lindsay, where can people find you, hear you, all that good stuff?
I am at Auburn Banker on the socials and our Discord, and you can check me out 7 to 9 Monday through Friday on NewsTalk WANI.
Yes. If you're watching on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe. Helps the channel out a ton. And don't forget, every Monday for the rest of the basketball season, 6 o'clock Central Time, we'll have our weekly Auburn basketball special with Zeph Jasper and Auburn basketball's Chad Pruitt. So be sure to check that out every single week. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Auburn.